with the masculine. That's, this archetype of the wounded masculine. It's the patriarchal kind of figures and energetics of control are what we're rehabilitating ourselves from. And men who are doing the work are, pioneering and front runnering this metamorphosis from the wounded masculine archetype.
Hello, everyone. I am Claudio Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspired podcast. My guest today is Christof Melchizedek. Christof, thank you for honoring us with your presence.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be on your show. I'm looking forward to our conversation today in consciousness and see where it takes us.
Thank you. And I think a lot of people heard about Drumvalo Melchizedek, and they read his books, attended his seminars. He's, I think, 70 plus years old. And when I heard your name, my curiosity spiked, and I said, I have to talk to you and see exactly how one can get or be given the Melchizedek name based on the level of awareness or consciousness and where he or she is on the path of or the spiritual path. So how did you get the name?
Yes, so that's an interesting starting point for our conversation. So I will share you the backstory of how this came to be. I don't think I've ever shared it before in a public setting, so this will be interesting for people who have tracked and followed me for a while. So I was taking groups to the Amazon jungle for shamanism, shamanic initiations. My path has been a lot of years in the health and fitness industry, 20 years, and then I come into energy healing, energy medicine. I studied with Barbara Brennan, and then I was going through two initiations simultaneously. One through the lineage of Africa, working with a plant medicine, Iboga. The second on another lineage, working with a plant medicine, ayahuasca. And so I was being initiated through these lineages. And at the time, I was taking groups out there. And for about 7 or 8 years, I took groups every year, I think, out to the Amazon. One in about 2013, I think it was, I took a group with a dear sister of mine, and there was a young man on the program who was a very gifted seer. And at that point, it was a 15-day dieter, working with a whole range of different plants, but obviously we're doing the ceremony with ayahuasca and chacruda. But in between ceremonies, he said to me, "Do you know who you are?" And I said, "Well, I think I do." And he was going, "Well, you've got a very strong lineage with the Order of Melchizedek." And I said to him, "Are you sure you've got the right bloke?" And I didn't really know much about the Order of Melchizedek at that point, I'll be honest. But it was obviously very strong in my field. And so we got to the end of towards the end of the retreat. And he said to me, "Listen, the Order of Melchizedek have come to me and said that they understand that you're a little unsure and not certain of this connection. So what they've said to me is that tonight they're going to give you a dream. And in that dream, it will be revealed your lineage." And so, of course, I don't know if you've ever been prophesized of having a dream, but it's very hard to get to sleep. You're a little bit excited. So anyway, the night goes on. We go back to Iquitos, where the city is. It's about an 8-hour drive, and I try to go to sleep that night. And of course, it's a bit tricky, and I'm not sleeping, and I wake up a few times, and ultimately I'm a bit tired, and finally I get to sleep in the right dream state. The dream does come. And so in the dream, I am in this kind of hotel lobby bar, and it's a very lush, and it's kind of like a scene from Star Wars. There's all these, interdimensional beings and funny, band playing over in the corner, and kind of like a scene like Star Wars. And I'm drinking this really bizarre blue substance, and I'm talking to this gentleman, and we're talking about a gathering, an important gathering, like a meeting, and we're working out some of the logistics of this kind of like a meeting, like a council meeting. I guess it was a little bit like that. I didn't really know what that was at the time. And so anyway, we get everything finalized, and off he goes to leave, and I just take a drink, and I turn to look at him leave, and on the back of his kind of cape, he's got this giant silver M, placed on the cape, and I just wake up in the moment and go, oh my God, it's true. And so that was the first kind of inception where I was, the dream came, and that's my like lineage. Then later, about 6 months later, I got another dream where Lord Melchizedek came to me and requested that he requested that I take the name Melchizedek, because it was on my path to be linked in to the order, and to be, become a embodied priest of the order of Melchizedek. At the time, I was very resistant, and it took me, I believe, 2 years to accept, and to accept the name, and then ultimately go on this path that I'm on. And ultimately, that was the seeding point from the Amazon. And another one came later, and then I ultimately accepted. And then, Christof's my birth name, Christopher. So I just kept that, and I did end up changing my name across to Melchizedek, and ultimately it sent me on this lineage that I'm on, and this quite crazy adventure in consciousness. It changed my trajectory as I started to basically accept the mission that came alongside it. And so that's the inception story.
Beautiful story. Thank you for sharing. And have you been revealed to you the connection of Lord Melchizedek with humanity? Is he here just to give the lead to some of us and enlighten them, and these enlightened beings help others, or is a different type of relationship?
So yeah, I have a direct relationship with Lord Melchizedek, and I do consider Lord Melchizedek like my spiritual father. I suspect is a very strong love and reverence, but I don't think Lord Melchizedek would ever say any information or anything is navigated for a few. It's for everyone.
Mhm.
And so it's all about the law of one in the order of Melchizedek. The law of one is all about understanding that we're all equal in the eyes of God. We're all connected as one. And ultimately, we are one consciousness, because if we consider how consciousness has come from source, it has dropped down the dimensions, and it has dropped down the dimensions and has ultimately come into this universe, Nebadon. This universe is made up of, has a sound frequency that holds the templates on dimensions 15, 14, 13, and then ultimately 12 dimensions. And so as our consciousness has stepped down, ultimately we came from a fully unified consciousness. And then ultimately we began to step our consciousness down. And as we stepped down through the dimensions, we became more individuated, so to speak. So that in dimensions 12, 11, and 10, we're an avatar consciousness, which is a massive unified consciousness. And we step down to an oversoul, stationed on dimensions 9, 8, and 7. And as an oversoul consciousness, we're like a unified with 12 souls. And that's what makes up an oversoul, or a monad. And then from that oversoul consciousness, which is a unified 12 souls, avatars are unified 144 souls. Ascended is another 12 times of that. There's 12 avatars that make up an ascended consciousness from dimensions 15, 14, or 13, and ultimately drop down into dimensions 6, 5, and 4. Six as a soul consciousness. Ultimately, however, if we take it all the way back to the very top, I think Lord Melchizedek would acknowledge that we are all one. We've come from the one source, and ultimately we're a fractal expression of that, individuated to have our unified purpose and direction that we're given. But ultimately, all our experiences go back to the one.
Yes, indeed. We get into this shape and then we have to work our way back up. And it's not easy, it's challenging. And I think at the same time, it's fun if we don't take it that seriously, as many people like yourself who are on the deep on the spiritual path keep telling us.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. We laugh a lot at our events because we can't take ourselves too seriously. We love to share some of the humorous things, some of the silly things that we've done, and we're all human, doing the very best we can. And you're right. We've come down this point of involution, which is the descent, and now here we are dangling at the very bottom, and many now are awakening to the ascent, the evolution. And that evolutionary path comes with, of course, all the challenges. And, I like to share about this concept of embodied ascension, which means it's not about leaving our bodies and going back up. It's about bringing all of that we are up there down into our body so that we are embodied, but holding the highest consciousness as we can. So it's not about leaving, it's about bringing our higher consciousness down into our body. And the way that we have navigated and learned and explored all of this is working through the wounds, the root traumas. It's the shadow work. Ascension is all about a shadow work, starting with the shadow work on the personality, the mother-father wounding. Ultimately, you might start getting clear on that, and your partner doesn't trigger you as much, which means your mother-father stuff is clear. Then you'll start working the ancestral lines, working the shadows on the ancestral, and then ultimately you'll start to work on the shadows of the soul. And as you start to, clear some of the karmic knots through your past lives, you'll start to work up higher in your soul matrix, up into the oversoul, and ultimately up into the avatar, and clearing karma for the avatar and the collective. And so there's no shortage of rolling the sleeves up and looking to get the shadow work done. But it's not glamorous, but it is very, very effective.
Yes, I already imagine those who have not been exposed to this type of information, listening and just getting tired at imagining these so many layers they have to go through, and they will say, forget about it. I will just live my life the way I'm doing it right now. And maybe next time I will have a different type of mood and approach to ascension.
Well, hopefully I can give someone who might be in that category a little motivational pep talk, because there's never a better time as now to roll your sleeves up and get things done, because you can solve, lifetimes worth of puzzles in this particular epoch we're in, because the frequency coming into the planet is so fast. It's like we are running our walking our path, or running our path of life with a very strong tailwind. So, you're either going to get it done now, or you're going to have to come back another incarnation where the conditions might not be so favorable and you might not get as far. Because today, if you've got a pure heart and wanting to evolve and to want to sincerely evolve, there's never been better conditions to go quickly, and ultimately, far. And which leads to a beautiful saying: if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So it's about finding people who want to evolve, working with others who are going to hold you accountable, to give you the feedback, the mirror, to sometimes tell you the difficult things that only a true friend would tell you, and to get that feedback, to be able to start working through the shadows, because ultimately it's the liberation of the shadows is really what the game is all about, because we're living in this, realm of polarity. And ultimately we've come here to polarity integrate. We're not in a fight against dark and light. That's duality thinking. What we're here to do is to integrate both. We're here to integrate the shadow, and we're here to integrate the light, and we find that middle space. And this is what the human heart is all about, coming into the center of our heart, and polarity integrating the three. To give people a guideline, the three big ones really are spirit and matter. We're to fully integrate our spiritual self into our physical biology, spirit and matter. We're to integrate fully, feminine, masculine, so that we are to unify our feminine, masculine, so that, it's really in that process that the birthing of the divine child emerges. That is the emergence of what some call Christ consciousness, what some call a 12th dimensional current, is simply nothing more than holding a high station of consciousness and merging and having a full merge of our feminine, masculine components of consciousness. And ultimately, the third one is directional, future and past, and to polarity integrate that into the now, because there only is the now. And if we take a look at that as a simple direction of life, to integrate our shadows, that is really the purpose of why we're here, is to evolve. Everyone has that as a mission. And then subsequent to that, they have their own little nuance of how they're going to contribute to the evolution of the whole. And as you start to find your way and you find the center of that polarity integration, you find your purpose here in your heart, and you can take the lessons you've learned, because your pain becomes your medicine and your wounds become your wisdom, and you get to share that with others and help them on their path in a way that uplifts the whole in some meaningful way.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned the balance between masculine and feminine. It was one of my questions, and I think a lot of us are struggling with this balance. And you can see the imbalance, in fact, in the number of men versus women attending spiritual related events, maybe your events as well. But over the last 4 or 5 years, I watch carefully how many men will attend these type of events, and usually it's 30% men, 70% women. I don't know how it is for your events, but I think we as men and organizing this type of events, we have to bring more men in, balance them more so there is more balance in their own life and their own families.
Yeah. And that's a statistic that I can, confirm is typically how it goes. The women don't need to understand, right? The women have got, a wider bandwidth of intuition, and men are hearing this from their wives, but need a direct experience. And that's why, they try to go to science to understand it, and they're looking at quantum physics, and they're trying to it's a little bit in their head. And this is why I love shamanism. This is my path has been shamanic. We've got a healing school called the Neo-Shamanic Society. It's a mystical school of healing and transformation. Shamanism gives people direct experience, because once you have a direct experience, it changes everything. And you need to have this a direct experience of transformational change, of energy, frequency, and vibration. And when guys can feel energy, frequency, and vibration, they're off to the races. But the problem is that we've got a strong wounding with the masculine. That's, this archetype of the wounded masculine. It's the patriarchal kind of figures and energetics of control are what we're rehabilitating ourselves from. And men who are doing the work are, pioneering and front runnering this metamorphosis from the wounded masculine archetype into the benevolent masculine, right? Which is a more of a loving, gentle, kind masculine energy. And, there's a great need for this work. One of the things I would say, though, that I'm very happy to see in the world, and, I live in New Zealand and witnessed this in Australia and America and Canada and, other Western templates, is that there is more men's circle work being done. There's a growing field of brotherhood, men coming together for initiations, for retreats, that is doing men's work. And I think that's a great movement and a great wonderful pathway to initiate men into the type of, I would call it, benevolent principles. And it's growing, but ultimately I would love to see men and women doing events together, because I think we are supposed to be together. But it's a starting point. And I do feel that in the years ahead, much, much more is going to become available, and more men are awakening. It's better than it was, but there's still more work to be done on the masculine.
Yes, and I know of Jerry Sargent of Star Magic, who organizes the Savage Men every year. So only 15 or 20 men gathering in Holland, and they do plant medicine. They do all kind of physical related events, and men come out of that experience transformed.
Yeah, and there's band of brothers doing great work. There's a range of different groups that are doing wonderful work, and I do feel that getting a direct experience is a starting point. I think men have traditionally not spoken emotionally to their peers about how they're truly feeling, and so they don't have that same emotional network and support. And if there are pockets and places where people are being able to do that, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Christof, you mentioned the two lineages, one in South Africa with sacred plant medicine, ayahuasca, San Pedro, um, and such, and the other one, the African. And a lot of people are going the South American. In a way, it's much easier to reach. But the African one, you need special invitation. I mean, I interviewed Tricia Eastman, and she did the Biwiti in Gabon, and it was a transformational experience for her. Some people might not come back. How it was for you, as much as you can share, of course.
Please. Yeah. So yeah, that's a very strong lineage of mine too, and it is from Gabon, the plant medicine iboga. My wife and I, we run ceremonies with iboga. We have done for a few years, and we find it to be the most transformational medicine on the planet today. It's not so well known, and it's the only plant that, every other plant medicine takes your consciousness up and out of your body. And, of course, people are probably more familiar with ayahuasca and chacruna, of the South American lineage. And, that's a consciousness with DMT and MAO, which allows your consciousness to leave your body so that you can feel a unified field experience. And it has a strong spirit. All the other plants, such as Bufo, 5-MeO, MET, they're all about taking your consciousness up and out.
Yeah.
Ayahuasca, we uncovered ayahuasca and iboga are sisters. And ayahuasca is the vine that climbs, and iboga is the root that goes down. And they are consciousness fields from the stars that incarnated and had a soul agreement to incarnate as plants to assist humanity. And ayahuasca is the helix of the DNA that spirals up. Iboga is the DNA helix of the root that goes down. So being a root of the iboga tree, it brings your higher consciousness in and down into your body. So typically, we are very, very deeply embodied initiates who do deep, deep shadow work. And we love the wood, the sacred wood, because the plant takes your consciousness down, 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 all the way to the root wound. And the root wound is the pain that you have been avoiding your entire life that set up the faulty scaffolding of your entire existence. And the plant goes all the way down to the very bottom and pulls it out. And it's like pulling a hair follicle, not that you and I have hair, but if I've got a little one in my beard, I can pull. But if you pull a hair follicle out and you get the bulb, that's the root. And that core wound has been responsible for all your energetic defenses, all your perceptions, and all the belief systems have come from that root wound. And there's very little, initiations out there that pluck that. Now, in saying that, the initiation in Africa is very different than initiation in South America, right? The Shipibos are full of love and softness, they wrap you around. And the Africans have love, but it's more of a tough love, right? It's kind of like, a stronger, tougher love. But it's a very taxing and full-on initiation, I'll say that. We developed a lineage, and the plant asked us to create a new line directly with the plant, not linked into Africa. And the plant asked us to develop something for Westerners. And so we've developed a formula that still give people a lot of wood, but there's wrapped around a little bit more feedback and understanding of things. It's a 2-day experience, two ceremonies back to back, death and rebirth. And the tradition from Bwiti, which we honor, of course, is extraordinary. And they've been working with this plant for eons and eons of time. And it's a very, very potent and powerful experience. And I do know that, this plant, there are no limits with this plant. You can go all the way up. We're accessing people's avatar consciousness fields and solving lifetimes worth of puzzles, taking them through very, very deep integration. And in fact, it was this plant in this morphogenic field and this shamanic kind of container that was part of the secret sauce that started our journey and starting to uncover many of the dark architecture that was locked down on the planet. So as people are aware, everything that is held below is created above. So many of the control systems and the pyramid of control and the locking down of the planet that's happened for thousands of years, we are in these ceremonial initiations. We're working with, say, 12 people at a time in our team, and each one had a DNA codex and a soul signature that got us access into enormous fields of dark architecture on the planet. And the plant was so powerful and strong, it provided the morphogenic field strong enough for us to start collapsing some of the, let's call it, dark architecture that was locking down the planet. And so it's been a very interesting relationship with the sacred wood, with the morphogenic field of the sacred wood, and the particular shamanic hit squad and grouping that we developed, and the brave souls that came to do the initiation with us. We resolved thousands of years worth of dark templating that had created the control systems on the planet through this miraculous plant.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. And we as a spiritual community work with plants, the intelligence of plants, as you mentioned, to break out of this prison planet. Are you aware of any modalities that those who put this prison concept and the dark system in place, playing and working with something similar to prevent what we are doing?
So we're very aware of the darker forces and the they've got a high level group of psychics that work together to try to prevent, counter move, counter move, right? So we come across them a lot. I am not sure, if they're using psychedelic plant medicine. I imagine they would be, right? And basically there's this tactical game going on. And to give people maybe I'll give a high level summary of what's happening. So many people are waking up to the fact that our planet has, been a prison planet for a long time. It's been part of a controlled network, and we're battery sources for extraterrestrial aliens who essentially are utilizing humanity and Earth as a battery pack. So the big picture is that there's a universe next to ours called Wesadak and Wesadrak. Our universe is called Nebadon, and basically the beings who used to reside over here in Wesadak and Wesadrak fell so far from Source on their path that they disconnected their consciousness from Source. They fell so far down that they disconnected from God. So they no longer had an eternally sustained consciousness. They had to develop a different strategy in order to be able to continue to sustain their consciousness eternally. So they, moved from having this eternal sustenance from God, no longer sustained. So they had to utilize advanced kind of, let's call it geometric engineering to create reversal networks to siphon energy and create networks of energy from others. Typically, within their universe, they used up all the quanta of energy available in their universe, Wesadak. So because they were running out of energy, they had to find another solution to keep powering up their consciousness because they were no longer supported by God. So they burrowed across into our universe called Nebadon using these kind of, let's call it tunnel gateways. They cut themselves in. They were very technologically advanced, and they began bossing the top of the matrix of our universe, and began overtaking different systems, and began a series of hybridization programs that began hybridizing their species with other different species, and created all these offshoots, the Draconians and the Anunnakis and the other various other beings who became kind of the master and controllers of this realm, of this universe. And so if you want to create energy, you create pain and suffering and misery, and the energy that comes out of that is loosh. Now, at the top of the matrix, if you think about compressing the energy, you compress that energy, it becomes like a spring. So by the time you get down to the third dimension in the physical domain, humans and our Earth is very, very compressed energy, which means it has a lot of potency and power. So it became a prized piece of real estate, not only because of being in the third dimension, but because it also was available for interdimensional travel, having one of the few planets in our universe that has the Stargate system, meaning that through our 12 Stargate system, beings are able to suddenly transmigrate their consciousness very quickly across to other time-space vectors in the galaxy. So it was a highly prized piece of real estate, and then they began to create control systems on our planet to keep humans capped off from their consciousness, implanted the human DNA signatures with various implants to prevent our consciousness from evolving into its fullest potential. Our original design is a angelic human DNA. We've got the angelic diamond sun DNA, which means we have the abilities to hold 12 dimensions of consciousness while embodied. We were destined and designed to be avatars, immortal beings on this planet, being the protectors and the guardians of this realm in this universe. However, we had this mass interference, and they tried to keep us at kindergarten consciousness by implanting our DNA architecture with implants preventing the natural evolution of consciousness to expand. Over time, they began to be able to put in various sets of energetic architecture, very sophisticated, to be able to create reversal networks to siphon the energy out of our planet And in order to do that, there were a couple of lineages that came onto our planet. There's the Luciferians and the Satanists. The Luciferians and the Satanists became descended bloodlines of the various controller groups and became the master and controllers of this realm on the planet, and began to be able to set up the different, let's call it grid architecture, but also systems on the planet to be the masters and controllers. The aliens want the loose energy, the humans want the power and control. They taught them how to do various nasty, unsavory rituals, and this is what this whole human trafficking business is about. You know, there's very unfortunate where there's a lot of child sacrifice and various dark rituals, occult rituals, which are utilized. And that energy gets sent up and off planet to the aliens who feed off that loose. The humans get the blood and the adrenochrome, which keeps them young, but however, on the dark path. And so when, of course, they stop doing it, they begin to age very rapidly and quickly. And right now, there's a lot of busting open of systems that are happening, and a liberation of these types of networks. So in our work and our energetically, we were working in some deep rituals that we're finding, let's call it the spaces and places where the energetic architecture was locking everything down. And I can give you, you know, one example of a network of 100 networks that were found. One network we found was linked into Washington, D.C., and it was holding the pillar of power for Washington. There's a secret society there called Skull and Bones. They were very prevalent in this ritual, holding it down in the 3D and all the way up to the top. So the ritual looks like this. On that particular weekend, this is with the root initiation that we run. We had a number of people on the floor that had extraterrestrial lifetimes linked in to the architects of this. Some Earth lifetimes are linked into Skull and Bones, and also there was a young girl on the floor who had a whole life as a drug addict and many lifetimes in suffering, and she became part of that story as well. And so essentially, when people are on the floor, and the plant was organizing who would come for us on the floor, and there would be a synchronistic miracle of the right people to do the next piece of the puzzle. This piece of the puzzle was Washington. So what we uncovered was that the girl who was an ex-addict trying to recover, her consciousness was utilized in a ritual at the top of the matrix as an Elohim. Her lineage is Elohim. And she was captured and trapped and placed into suffering up at the top of the matrix, just below the 12th dimension, 11 and a half or 11. And the centers of broadcast suffering, what they needed some Elohim consciousness, because Elohim are the creator gods. So if we think of sort of how spirituality is organized, we have God. The right-hand side of God, we've got the angels. On the left-hand side, we have got the the creator gods, the Elohim. They captured some of the creator God Elohim consciousness, put it in pain and suffering, and trapped it, and sent a broadcast down to the causal plane. The causal plane, there was a large crystal skull from the founder of the Skull and Bones, who'd placed at death his skull as a template on the causal plane, and it had a sword through it. The sword and the skull through it was sending a broadcast of pain and suffering from the Elohim down into the causal plane, which then held the causal plane templates for the control, for the political control, or for the wider control system on the planet. That broadcasted itself down into key anchor points in Washington as part of the Skull and Bones kind of society, and part of a wider control systems and networks. And so that there created a massive, massive pillar, because it went all the way to the top of the matrix, all the way to the 3D, and a massive, massive big pillar that was locking everything down. And so we were able to find that ritual, undo it, because it was locked down with pain and suffering and sacrifice. There was a lot of, course, child sacrifice energy that was feeding into the network from the bottom up. And so the child sacrifice energy going up, the Elohim sacrifice energy coming down, held in place into the causal plane with the skull, creating a strong pillar, was meaning that nothing was going to change in Washington for a long time. And I believe we did that several months before the election. And this is part of the undoing of architecture like this, and many, many others that we've encountered on our journey, is the reason why there appears to be movement on the earth right now. And I think anyone who's looking at Washington or America right now will easily admit that for the first time there's some proper movement happening. And the reason why there's movement happening is that there's been a lot of rituals that were locking things down into the old sort of, forces of control that are no longer in play. And so now things can move through like butter because none of the architecture that was holding the templates are in place. There's new templates that are being built that's going to create this new eon of time we're moving in. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but according to many Vedic astrologers, the recent equinox, 21st of March, 2025, was this official transition out of the Kali Yuga into this new eon of time. And so we're really coming out of this dark age. And this is a time for new consciousness and new streams of way we're organizing ourselves into a more golden age. And I think it's required until we get to this time where, enough people have the awareness, the consciousness, not to be a victim anymore, but to be a victor, to overcome ourselves. And this path isn't fighting others. It's all about this understanding of unity consciousness. It's ourselves. We're healing ourselves. We are undoing what many of us have done, and we are repairing much of the grid work on the level of the soul, so that humanity can now begin to emerge in a new way where we hold the polarity integration of the light and the dark. We've walked the path of dark. We know how that works. Now it's time to integrate that and to hold the balance of both shadow and light.
Wow, this is fascinating. And yes, love and light is beautiful, to have that feeling of fulfillment and be in an ecstatic state of being all day long is just beautiful. And I know that what you are doing, the work you are doing, and the work others are doing with ley lines and activating crystal and energy lines all over the world is not easy. Takes a lot of effort. Do you have any ascended masters helping with this work consciously, or they are doing their part, separate?
In my sort of team, I don't sort of work with ascended masters. It's not my sort of lineage, but I do work with some groups of beings that are providing the overwatch and the higher support. So the lineage that currently working through with us and our team and who we're working with is the Emerald Order and the Emerald Order Covenant, the Melchizedek Order, obviously. We work with the Council of Elders and the Unified Guardians, Unified Pure Guardians, and then one other group of beings is the an angelic collective has recently come to support. So they kind of provide what we might call the upstairs support. There are probably, when we were doing the deeper mission work with the Guardians, we probably had about 2,000 embodied humans that were providing meditation support for when we were doing the missions, especially in the rituals. So there was kind of like this beautiful, and when we were doing on the deepest, darker stuff, we worked on a lot of very, very nasty, dark templates. It was very tough 3 or 4 years of our life. Thankfully, we're through the toughest bits, but it was very, very dark. I mean, we were dealing with the Vatican, we're dealing with Washington, we're dealing with the military-industrial complex, we're dealing with things that were set up in Egypt. There's a lot of child sacrifice. We're dealing with the underworld. There was a lot of very, very heaviness, and so we needed that kind of support. And it got to a point where we also we're dealing with the grey or the demiurge. And so during all of that, the only way that we got through was having the full vertical of embodied humans. The plant, Iboga was supporting. We had, a couple thousand embodied humans, and there was essentially just 4 of us as a core team that were really doing the deeper stuff. And then we, of course, had all that sort of realm of beings from the other realm, other dimensions. So there was a real team effort to, the layers of consciousness that created the special ingredients that allowed such transformation to take place.
Yes, I'm in contact with 3, 4 other teams who are doing similar, maybe not as deep as work as you do, and I know is not easy. And going back to something much closer to us, February 2025, you participated at Anarchapulco, and Jeff Berwick came publicly about the work you did on him and his family. And this leads me to asking exactly how do you work with these type of cases where you look at someone and you see that they have energetic blockages, and you just tell them lay down, you move your hands around their chest, and then they will yell a little bit as Jeff did, and everything is puff, it's gone, and they are pretty much liberated from that weight.
Great question. And we've got a healing school, the Neo-Shamanic Society. It's a 3-year journey that people come through, and we do teach a lot of techniques. But honestly, the secret to it is depth, right? When you hold a higher consciousness, right, basically you're bringing a much, much bigger stream of consciousness in. So and over the years of my many, many hours of direct experience working with thousands of people, one-on-one or in groups, I honestly believe now that the secret is holding a higher station as consciousness as possible, be deeply embodied. When you've got depth, because you've done your shadow work, you're bringing an enormous amount of consciousness through into someone's system. Now, the one technique that I would say that is useful is that when I'm working with someone, one-to-one, I'm getting my hands into the tissues, and I'm releasing the stuff in the tissues because the fascia is floating in fluid, and the fluid holds the cellular imprinted memory of the pain and the trauma. So there are specific sites in the body, and I had, blessed 20 years in the fitness industry as a physical therapist, as a trainer. I know the body really good. I had great hands as a massage therapist. I know where the pain and the trauma is, and so as I'm working through people, there's a few zones that I'm bringing a large consciousness field into a few zones. I'm working through the psoas, the chest, the jaw, and it just pops open and releases, and people have these, massive releases. And so, if someone's wanting to, I want to get involved and start evolving, it's good to work with therapists. It's good to be part of a container, part of a program, part of a supporting matrix. I think, as I look back at people I have been giving one-to-one healings on, I can't give that many one-to-one healings, unfortunately, because obviously I've got a lot of other things on, and I'm trying to leverage my knowledge for others by developing pathways for others to follow. So the real secret, of course, is understanding energy and frequency and vibration at a very high level. I want to honor my mentor, Barbara Brennan. I studied with her for 4 years. She gave me excellent foundations on energy and frequency. And I want to honor also the collectives that I mentioned earlier who come through me for the healing. So there's a lot going on, but I do think that the tissues themselves do have an important role. And certainly when we do live events and live immersions, it's actually pretty incredible what goes on, because I've got a number of people who have been studying with me for several years. They tend to come to the events as well. And so when we have people popping, we'll have 10, sometimes 10 or 15 people are all processing heavily at one time. We've got a series of healers there that are all providing support. It's kind of like a symphony of transformation and change. So yeah, mainly it's bringing through faster wavelengths through a particle physics principle known as harmonic induction. Harmonic induction and transduction is simply the introduction of faster wavelengths into a system that has slower wavelengths and discordance. If you bring highly coherent energy into the presence of discordant energy, that highly coherent energy will reorganize the discordant energy like a resonator. So you become like a resonating rod of frequency that is highly coherent, reorganizing the biophotonic light emission coming from people's DNA and reorganizing light emissions in their body so that it moves from discordance to coherence. And if you're deeply embodied and you've done a lot of shadow work, that means that you're deeply integrated. Then that deeply integration combined with high coherence creates quite dramatic, fast transformation for others.
Yes, it's interesting because I'm going through the process right now of controlling the energy coming into my body. I had my first group session, 24 people, and it was way too much for me. the energy was so powerful coming through me and going out that two of the ladies who attended had to drop off because they thought they felt palpitations, heart palpitations. So with me, I really have to start knowing how to control the energy, talking to the guys upstairs and, teaching me how to do it, and maybe scale back from 20 to 15 people and adjust based on the feedback I receive.
Beautiful. We do events for various numbers of people. My favorite size, is around 20, 24, like you had, but we have probably about 6 facilitators for 24 people. And so we run things, when you go into bigger numbers, 100 or 200, it's much more difficult to manage because the sort of depth that people go through in an event means that a lot of stuff comes up and you just need enough skilled practitioners around to be able to deal with that. And that's when I saw the vision of what we wanted to do, why we wanted to create the school so deep. It's, it's a 3-year journey. And so we're fortunate that we've got a whole team of students. Well, they're masters in their own right now, who have come through the training. They're excellent healers. So you need that level of support because, what I've noticed about, let's call it the personal development industry, right, is that the personal development industry provides a lot of great information, but that doesn't provide a lot of great healing. And ultimately, to change someone's life is you need to do more than changing a belief, right? Because the belief is there because of a wound. And the core wound is this trapped, compacted energy, which is the trapped pain from childhood. And to keep it simple, it's an excessive amount of piezoelectric charge, that from trauma or from something. And that piezoelectric charge is dormant in the body until the wound attracts something that is going to bring it towards it, because, law of attraction always is going to bring a trigger that brings someone towards you to help heal the wound. And usually we project out to keep that energy away. And so our energetic defenses keep away the frequency we're constantly attracting. Now, the personal development industry is not working at that depth. They're working at the mid-level of the human consciousness system, which is usually the level of belief. And so what they're doing is they're introducing new ideas, new concepts. They may even give you some, let's call it belief rewiring technology, where you start to rewire beliefs and take you through processes that burst you through beliefs. But ultimately, what I've noticed over time is that the beliefs come back, and they come back because the anchor of the wound is still in place. And as long as the anchor of the wound is still in place, that is what's holding the magnetic field of the neural nets in place. So the neural nets can't really, totally fully release when the anchor or the lowest frequency of the wound is in place. In order to get to the wound, though, the wound is the most sacred of spaces, because it's the zone of transformation. And the zone of transformation, to get that deep, someone has to feel safe enough. They have to go into full surrender, and they have to have enough support in them to be able to fully let go and allow that wound to work through them. And these, I think the personal development industry does a lot of great stuff. However, it's not really set up for the clearing of the deep wounds, and this is really where healers come in, like what you're doing, and the smaller groups. Or if you have 100 people, you'd need, in my opinion, at least 20 facilitators, right? So that you've got, when people are kicking off, there's enough support there to pull out and frag out the electrical energy of the wound, because that electrical energy is that charge in their system that they've been locking down and keeping in their body, but it's what makes them reactive. And changing beliefs doesn't deal with that. You got to get it out of their system, and that's like the deep personal process work. And that's why I think, the plant medicine field does a pretty good job, of accessing wounding and opens it up. It gets the mind out the way. Ultimately, though, you want to do it, if you can do it organically, it's even better, because the consciousness is fully present during the whole thing. And that's why I like, of all the plants, the sacred wood, iboga, because your consciousness is fully present during the whole thing. It's not left. So in answer to that comment is that, the more intimate work, look for, if I was a member of the public looking for where can I get change and transformation, look for healers that are doing great work, intimate work, that allows you to feel safe enough to let go and fully surrender and be held by someone who's got a highly coherent field to allow that electrical charge to get out of your body. And if you can do that, that one thing will change your entire life to get rid of those, that deep wound.
Yeah, it's a fascinating field, and we have so much to learn every single day. I'm in awe with everything I hear and you learn from my guests. So it's just beautiful. Christof, you live in New Zealand, and New Zealand, like Australia, Canada, and other Western countries, went through a very harsh lockdown in the past, the recent past. How do you feel the energy of the country now, and do you see any social changes taking place?
Okay, so it's a great question. And of course, we moved to New Zealand 5 years ago, just before the lockdown. We were living in Ibiza in Spain, and my wife said there's something coming, and we don't want to be in Europe for it. And so she could sense the pre-wave of what that was, and we managed to get out and be in New Zealand. But of course, we had we had a dark witch running the show here during that time, Jacinda. She was very much in part of the agenda, and it was it was tough, but we were in our own bubble, so we didn't really let it to get to experience it as much, because we live in a nice spot. We don't live in a city, and so we were pretty much out of everything. And actually I felt that the lockdown, one of the benefits was, of course, was the Great Awakening. While it was a very dark, heavy time, a lot of people became aware for the first time of the control system. And, oh, actually, we're not free. We are, there is something else going on. So what it's done is sparked the movement, and in New Zealand, there's some great movements that have emerged. I do want to honor, Voices of Freedom, doctors speaking out, other various movements that are creating have got enough support now that they are affecting policy in the government. When the government's trying to push through sneaky laws, these guys are on it, getting enough awareness out there through their reality check radio and through their email list, an enormous amount of support that's blocking various agendas. Now, in terms of the frequency in New Zealand, I mean, New Zealand is vibration is phenomenal. It's it's incredible energy and frequency and consciousness here. It's like Lemuria, right? So New Zealand's the mountaintops of Lemuria. There's only really one other place I've been where the frequency is so clean, and that's Costa Rica. So, New Zealand has got such a clean energy and frequency. So we feel really good here for now. Ultimately we might want to, we go travel for most of our community is international. So we don't actually have that many New Zealand people that follow us. We've mainly got an international community. So we got to go travel, and we do events overseas. But ultimately for now, it's home. We love living here because of the clean frequency and energy and consciousness. And we don't let external authority, such as the government, interfere with how we feel. And ultimately we are creating we create our own reality outside of what any external authority is trying to see and do. I think there's a good awakening that's happened in New Zealand. There are people that I would not have picked becoming aware of what's happening on the earth. And so I think there's a whole roast of Western countries are in the same boat. One of the things that we were shown is that New Zealand is going to be the first country to throw off the cabal, and then that's going to ripple out around the world. What tends to happen in New Zealand is things happen here first in New Zealand, and then ripple out around the world because we're the first one on the international dateline. And so we've had many things happen first here in New Zealand that get tested or get done, and then it ripples out around the world. And there may be a time where the government's authority to rule on behalf of the Crown is revoked. And so that will be an interesting time in the years ahead, and then we'll start to see what comes.
Yeah, beautiful. And Christof, at this point of our discussion, I would like to insert a very serious question. If you could host a dinner party with 3 historical or spiritual figures, who would they be? And what will the topics of discussion be?
Wow, what a great question. I love that. That's like, I've never had that question before. 3 people for dinner. Who would I like to invite from any time of history?
Yes.
Great. Oh my goodness. I think I need a bit of time to tune into that. I'm going to just obviously go for maybe characters that I find inspiration from, So Nikola Tesla would be one. I'd love to invite Nikola Tesla to that conversation. Who else would I love? Who else has been very interesting? I'd love to I'd love to invite Nikola Tesla. Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, I would love to go all the way back. I'd love to invite Joshua,
Mhm.
Joshua Ben Joseph, to dinner. That would be a good one, and probably the Buddha. So Jesus, Buddha, and Nikola Tesla would be a great dinner party.
Yes, and you'll talk about soccer for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'll talk about how Liverpool's going to win the league this year.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. And a lot of light workers these days, as we discussed, they are lighting up, they are waking up, and they want to build a business around their gifts. What
Mm.
would you be your advice? What they should look to do as practical lesson to build this type of livelihood?
Thank you. I love that question. This is like such and light workers, to have such a deep resonance in my heart. And I just want to first up, before I answer that, just acknowledge the incredible work that you're all doing around the planet. If you're a light worker and you're watching this, thank you, because you're really one of the, you're making the difference. You're the bridge, because the light workers are sensing things that the mainstream do not. And they are seeing things well ahead of time and are pioneering. When we lift the cabal out of the picture and we become sovereign and liberated from our ET oppressors, the world will owe the lightworker community such a massive debt of gratitude it can never be repaid. So thank you, truly, for all that you're doing, every one of you around the world. It was a tough gig. If you knew how tough it was, you probably wouldn't have agreed to come. But when the call got sent out across the multiverse for other star seeds to come to this planet and help with the ascension, you probably didn't realize how tough it was going to be. And so, yes, it's a tough gig, but ultimately you're here, and we are responsible for this bridging and change that's happening. Now, in saying that, you're here for a mission and a purpose. The challenge that I've dealt with a lot of light workers over the years, and the struggle's all the same. What the struggle is that they find it challenging to interface with the 3D in order to bring their ideas and wisdom in through into the planet. And that's because they're quite plugged in up there, but they're not so plugged in down here. And so ultimately, my advice and tactics is to do the shadow work on your egoic deficiencies on the lower three centers. Most light workers' architecture looks like this. Boom, up here like that with their upper centers, and their lower centers like this. So you're trying to take all of that light and consciousness, and you're trying to bring it through a small funnel down here, because there are still deficiencies, especially in the root chakra. You got to work on that getting plugged into the earth. And that means doing that shadow work. And so if you can do that, then it's going to be easier to start to transpond your ideas from the ethereal, to the celestial, to the terrestrial, right? So, sorry, what's that? Let me just turn her off there. Sorry, it's my wife trying to go through. Is that plugging into the earth grids becomes so important. Now, in saying that, with that being stated, and let's say you can move forward on that and really, really work on that to get rooted, you need to be able to interface into the systems, into the way things work on Earth, right? So ultimately, you've got to be able to share your message. And the great thing with the internet is there's never a better time. And the great thing with the internet is you can do distance work. Now, ultimately, we've created a process where, you start off by, you got to start doing one-to-one work, right? If you want to get into the healing transformational arts and run retreats, and I think most light workers would love that. They would love to be able to run a circle and ceremony or a retreat or an event. You can't stage steal by going to that first. You've got to get deep results working with people one-to-one. Now, ultimately, this is your mission. This is not a job, right? This is your life mission. So I'd invite you to look with at least a 10-year window into what you're doing. When you move from trying to solve something in 6 months to a year to having a 10-year window for your development plan, and you're still going to be young. We only get better as we get older. I'm going to be rocking it out in my 80s, still doing this work, right? We get better, we get more embodied wisdom. So start with thinking of a 10-year trajectory, because when you think like that, you can start to build deeper roots and deeper foundations. And ultimately, you have to get good at your craft. You have to get so good at healing that it stops and makes people take notice of you. You got to become in the top, you got to get into the top 5% in the world of healing arts. And if you can do that, you're going to become exceptional. What is exceptional? It's, exceptional means, not normal. It's, you're not doing what everyone else is doing in the healing arts. You've got to do things in a different way. You've got to learn to work with the wound. If you can learn how to deal with the core wound and get core wounds out of people's system quickly, you're going to be in demand all the time. Now, tactically, how do you start going about getting word out? Most people are trying to, figure out the tactics before they've got the depth and the skills, right? You've got the order of operations wrong. You don't need fancy marketing techniques or internet processes in the beginning. What you need is to become deeply skilled and embodied, highly skilled and highly embodied and good at what you do, because you'll be able to generate enough work one-to-one just through word of mouth. If you're not generating enough work through word of mouth alone, you're not good enough yet. Don't even worry about going to your marketing until you get good enough where people are talking about you behind your back. If you're not at that point, don't get distracted by internet marketing, because you're going to build this whole funnel into a system where you're not converting your clients. You want to be able to get to a point where your conversions are so good and people are coming to you. Once you got to that point, then you can start to look at trying to get into fancy marketing. And as weird as it sounds, we don't do any marketing. We're about, maybe, I think, 3 to 6 months away, and we'll start to do paid advertising. And I've got a healing school with a 3-year journey program. We do it through word of mouth because we're testing ourselves and our systems and our processes. Does it work? So focus on a long-term plan, get depth and deeply embodied in yourself, ground into your root chakra, and get great results with your clients. If you're not getting good enough results yet, find mentors and teachers and healers that can help you get to that point. You can fast track yourself. So if you've got a 10-year format and you find someone who's got a 1 or 2 year training, that's like only 10, 20% of your 10-year plan, right? You got to apprentice in or learn from masters who can take you. One of the best investments I ever made, as I look back, I had no idea why I was doing it, but when I enrolled at the Barbara Brennan School, it was a 4-year program. Right. And it was my 3rd degree. I had a degree in physical education, one in psychology, and this was one in energy medicine. Right. So it gave me foundations. And I did another 7 years apprenticeship with, the shamanic lineages. Our school's 3 years. Find something that you resonate with that's going to take you on a journey. And my opinion of who to look for is to find someone who's already doing what you're doing, what you want to do. Find someone where you vision yourself to be in 10 years. Right, and go learn from them, right, and that is the fastest route. Then the last part of the equation is write a weekly or video weekly, but I like writing. Writing gets you to structure your thoughts in the best way. Write personal, authentic, heart-sharing stories about your personal journey, what you're going through, what's coming up for you, what you're observing in the world, and take a commitment every week to write about it. And then if you write about it, then just, on video, make a video and read it on video. And if you do that once a week, over time, this is the formula I use. I just write once a week. And over time, people became interested in what I had to say, and I developed an email list. You need to develop an email list of people that want to receive your message. Social media is great, good, but you don't own the list, but you're renting it. So basically get it out on social media, but make a sweetener that they come and want to get your emails direct, and make your emails so interesting they always read them. That it doesn't just become spam. It becomes so interesting because it's so highly personalized and resonant to them because you'll resonate with them. And so what you have to do is you have to find your mission of who you're here to support, right? You've got the mission of raising the consciousness on the planet. It's a big job, right? So the next thing you need to figure out is, who am I going to target for that? What are the unique challenges that I'm going to solve for people? Well, it's very easy to find those. You find them in yourself. What unique challenges have I overcome? What's my path of pain that I've had to transcend? Because remember what I said earlier, your pain becomes your medicine and your wounds become your wisdom. You need to share from this place of a deep direct experience, very embodied experience where you can share the nuances of your personal story. Your personal story then becomes interesting to people because you'll overcome a challenge that they have. And then you share once a week, like through that, and then you invite people. In the beginning, give healings for free until you get so good that you can charge, and then you get so good that people are getting referrals. When you get enough referrals coming in, then you can start thinking about internet marketing and expanding from one-to-one into small groups. You go one-to-one. Now, here's the tactics of how you start to move up the chain. What you do is I'm going to keep the maths simple, right? Just so we've got like we can speak about the mathematics of the numbers, because ultimately when I got into the healing arts, I came out of my 4 year, probably cost me 100 grand, my 4 years with Barbara, in terms of, the travel, the accommodation, and then the fees. I was thinking, if I'm charging 100 euros a session, it's going to take a long time to get that investment back, right? And so ultimately, doing one-to-one work is not how you're going to make a life, right? You can make a living, but you can't make a life. Ultimately, you've got to get into small groups, and then you got to get into large groups. And so that progression of small group programming online that feeds into your live events and live immersions and retreats is how you start to roll it up, but you can't stage steal. So you got to start. So let's say, for example, you're charging $100. I'm just going to get my calculator out just because numbers aren't my game. Right, here we go. Let's say you do 15 sessions a week times 100, brings you in 1,500 a week times 52 divided by 12 gives you gives you 6,500 income doing 15 sessions a week at $100 an hour. Now you can make a living like that, but you can't make a life. But ultimately, at some point, when you get busy enough, you need to make the transition over to small groups, because when you start running small groups online, that's what starts to give you the leverage, right? And when you can leverage yourself, that's when things start to, magic happens, right? And the good thing about healing is that healing works one-to-one, but you can also do healing for groups, right? And that works great. And when I worked that out, I knew I was off to the races. So here's what you do. Once you get to 15 sessions a week, you then create a guinea pig promotion where you bring people into a small group. Let's call it, just to keep our maths simple, 10 people. You have 10 to 12 people in a group. And what you do is you take your one-to-one rates and you charge them for the group. So let's say when you're selling one-to-one, you always want to sell packages, a package of 3 months, 12 sessions, once a week for 12 weeks. You do your first session with someone, you do a great session, you give them a healing, you have a follow-up session 3 days later. On the session, you follow up later, 3 days later, you sell. You sell what the gap is. You sell the gap in their consciousness, what's preventing them from having their vision. Once you sell that, you sell a 12-session package. They pay up front $1,200, or they pay $100 a week for 12 weeks. $1,200 for the package. Then when you run your group, you're looking for 10 people to pay $1,200 for the 12 weeks. So you've got 10 people paying you $1,200. And so if I do the maths on that, 10 people that paying $1,200 is $12,000. I shouldn't have needed that calculator for that one. I'm sorry. $12,000. You've got $12,000 for the same amount of time. It's a 2-hour session, $12,000. Right. So suddenly, you've leveraged your time. Usually it would take 12 clients to do that. Once you've got your first small group, what you do is you put your rates up. You triple or 5 times your rates, because what you do is you move from $100 a session to $300 a session, and you have the $1,200 package for 3 months in groups of 10, so that when you get a new lead, you bring them in for the first session, and then you can sell them into the package into the group. Or if they really want to work with you one-to-one, then you've got your premium package, which is say $300 or $500 a session. And so ultimately, that's your kind of way you can start scaling you up by moving to small groups. Then you begin to up your one-to-one rates to encourage the price difference to move people into groups, because when you start working with groups, it's when you do your leverage. Then ultimately, you start to create programs, and then you can start to move on from there. And that's how you transition to leverage your income. But the whole thing's dependent upon being deeply embodied, very grounded and pragmatic, work through your woundings so you get epic results with people and you can work on their wounds. And when you can do that and you can find your audience, you just write an email once a week, get it out there, and it starts momentum. And that's how I would tactically move forward as a light worker.
Wow, thank you very much. You just gave us a business plan, full business plan, very detailed. I hope everyone listening will take advantage and will implement it. And in fact, this is how I started. I offer free sessions, many of them. And then people started to notice, and I organize free session groups. And now they are contacting me from one-on-one, and from there we'll see how everything will evolve.
Beautiful. That's exactly, you got to start for free in the beginning. You got to prove your worth. You got to, the way you get clients is you show them you can get results for them,
Yeah.
and then when you can get results for them, they want to work with you. And
Yeah.
so I hope that supports any healer out there, light worker who wants to enter into the space. And the good thing about it, there's no limit on how many, it's all about, how many lives you touch. A very simple
Exactly.
formula. The more lives you touch, the more income just comes in, right? It's just the way it is. So ultimately, you got to know who you are, right? That's important. What's your message? Who's my audience? And target specifically. The more tighter you can get onto solving specific challenges for people, the more you'll find people will come to you.
Yes. Christoph, correct me if I'm wrong, but you played the Native American flute. Is that medicine to you?
Yeah, I mean, I love the flute. I love the handpan. I wouldn't say I'm in the top tiers of abilities. Like I've got some friends who are just phenomenal at it, but I love playing and I love music. I love the sound. I love working with sound frequencies. I love the crystal bowls. Oh, they're all beautiful. Carrier waves and frequency and energy. And I think that sound is primal, of course. So anything that's good like that. Crystal bowls are great carrier waves for healing. Yeah, the handpan sounds beautiful. There's a lot of great instruments that are out there. And of course, what I love about shamanism is that it's so creative, it's so artistic. You can bring in a lot of things to your events and experiences.
Yeah, I'm experimenting with the flute as well, but takes time. It's not as easy as someone explained to me. So I want to be proficient and learn it, kind of a professional way by notes and be able to read the notes, not just freestyle.
Yeah,
So it takes some
yeah,
time.
it takes time, but what you're doing there is you're getting deep roots for everything to come.
Yeah. Christoph, what are the programs or the workshops you are going to organize for the remaining of the year?
Okay, so this year we're putting a lot of effort into the Neo-Shamanic Society. It's not doesn't have its own internet site yet, but we're developing programming. So I think if there's light workers or healers that are interested, you can start off by just going to my website, christof.love, CHRISTOF.love. And there's a spiritual growth cheat sheet on my homepage. Download that, and then you can have a look around what's on available. Enhance your energetic intelligence, I believe, is on my website. It's a starting point into the Neo-Shamanic Society, or just drop us an email and our team will get in touch. We've got a 1-year certification training for the Neo-Shamanic Society. We're enrolling people into that, which is a 1-year journey into all that you're becoming. We do have the ability to do a let's call it, let me suss out this information first. Let me suss out if this is going to be good. So enhance energetic intelligence is a possibility for that. Or we have Neo-Shamanic Foundations. That's where I would recommend, if you're not sure if you want to dive into the first year. Neo-Shamanic Foundations is a sort of a 16-week kind of a deep dive training. It gives you the foundations of all of this world that we're creating in Neo-Shamanism. And it's an excellent starting point for people to get started into, really, I would call it sophisticated healing technology. We wanted to create a certification training that creates the top 1% of healers in the world. That's why it's 3 years, because it's not about what you learn, it's who you become. It's a pathway of your own personal transformation. That takes time, but along the way you learn really good deep skills and tools, and most importantly, ceremonial magic. If there's one thing that I would say to a light worker is that if you can learn ceremonial magic, it puts you into another category, because what you're doing is you're creating the special world. You need to learn how to create sacred morphogenetic containers. that's based upon shamanic magical principles, because what it does is it moves people from the ordinary world to the special world. And when someone sits into that field of energy, everything becomes amplified. It's learning how to create that, shamanic space, sacred space. It juices everything up. It creates a much bigger, expansive field.
Yeah, and that space is amazing to know how to create it, as you said. I mean, I interviewed Mandaza Kandemwa from Zimbabwe. He's a well-regarded shaman and healer. And I interviewed and read about other shamans, especially from Africa. They are so skilled at what they do because they work with different type of plants, as you know. And the way they move the energy and open portals and go back and forth between different worlds and universes is just fascinating.
And it was really that's what inspired us to create the Neo Shamanic Society, because there wasn't really a place that for Westerners to go and study and apprentice with, because most of the shamanic traditions are linked into a cultural tradition, and many Westerners go there and get that cultural tradition, but it's based upon that culture. We wanted to create something that was for Westerners. Basically, they would go through an initiation, of a journey to understand how to deal with the Western mind, because most of the core shamanism, the shamans are fabulously talented, but they don't understand the Western mind and the Western conditioning in the same way as they understand their own culture, right? So we created this essentially for Westerners to come into a template to truly understand the human condition, and to take someone on a journey, not just through personal physiology and personal psychology, but deep knowledge of energetic psychology and ultimately deep knowledge of soul psychology. Because what I believe is that we need to take people on a journey so that they can embody as much of their higher consciousness as possible. And that's how we've structured the school, is that you want to, work on the root wounds, right? You got to get the mother father wounds sorted out. Then you got to start working ancestral lineages. Then you want to start working past lives, and ultimately you want to start working on embodying more of your higher consciousness. And so we've developed a process that takes people through that, just so that they can work with their clients in that way. Because ultimately, you can take clients on a very long journey, because everyone's got wounding still to work on. But ultimately, you want to align. I believe as a coach, as a healer, you want to get people out of pain and into problems, but into purpose.
Yep.
And so you want to start getting them into their sweet spot of what their spiritual purpose is. And if you can allow them to align into their spiritual purpose and encourage them and provide the healing and the integration required to live in alignment with their purpose, there's nothing greater as a healing facilitator than to do that for someone. It's a great gift you're giving them. But you've got to remove the anchors of the wounds, the pain, the electrical charge, and ultimately the karma. Because what we've uncovered on this journey is that the big changes on someone's life, the highest level of change comes at the level of the soul and karmic knots on the soul. When you start solving karma on the soul, suddenly the gates can open for people. Because sometimes the reason why opportunities aren't opening up for people is that there's still a big karmic load upstairs, karmic knots and karmic debt that is even preventing opportunities from opening up from people. So you start working on the level of the soul psychology, and this is when the big transformational, revolutionary change happens, bigger than even a wound. It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, working on ourselves can become a full-time job for some of us, and but again, it's a beautiful work, and we'll better ourselves for sure.
It's all about that, and I think if a light worker has a long-term commitment to evolving themselves, just relax. Know that you're going to make it. You're gonna if you're committed to a lifelong constant evolution, and you're not afraid to look into your shadows, then you're gonna get where you want to go. Just be patient. It's going to happen. Okay, you're exactly where you need to be. And it's for me, it's like when people ask for my advice, I often say it's what should I learn, right? I don't I don't tell people, I don't think you should focus on what to learn. I think you should focus on who to learn from, because you should find someone who's already doing what you want to do and learn from them, because they've got the embodied wisdom of having gone through the nuances of it. And so it's not really what to learn, it's who to learn from. Find someone who's already doing what you want to do and go learn from them. And then and that'll be the fastest path. And if you're willing to keep evolving and growing and healing, you're going to make it. Okay. It's written in your stars. It's literally, you know, the more fine-tuned you come, God is backing anyone up who's walking in alignment with their pre-birth soul agreements.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're working in alignment with your pre-birth soul agreements, the wind is at your back, right? So you're going to make it. It's just, you know, divine timing is different than personal timing. Our ego and personality often wants it now, but divine right timing is in when it's the divine right timing of God's will, but also your own consciousness. And in my observation, there are three things that determine what the timing's right: consciousness, coding, and contract. Right. So what those three things are is that you must have the contract for it, i.e. a pre-birth soul agreement. If you've got a pre-birth soul agreement for the life path you're walking, the gates will always open for you. If you do not have a pre-birth soul agreement, the gates will not open. Now, even if you've got a station of consciousness holding enough to, it's not your purpose, right? So the pre-birth soul agreement is important. That's why you have to tune into your high heart. Your high heart is where these things reside, your purpose, your blueprint, and you'll start to get more refinements on that. The second thing is coding. That's your DNA. So your DNA has to be a certain expression. Once your DNA begins to open enough, you will begin to open these zip files of information and consciousness. The zip file will open, and suddenly that frequency will be in your field, right? Of what you're supposed, what it is to open things up for you. And finally, the final thing is consciousness. You have to have a higher station of consciousness. And once you reach that level, it will suddenly open for you. So it's those three combinations that, in my opinion, determines divine right timing: consciousness, coding, and contract. And then it's all about when you're ready.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. It's very, very interesting. And I advise those watching to go back, rewind, and listen again, because it's so much information in what Christof said. Christof, if you have the chance to give humanity another gift other than what you are offering right now, what would that gift be?
I think it would be easy. I would want the gift of knowing for people, knowing that they are God, right? They're not separate from God, because I think a lot of the world's problems come from this perception of separation. You know, that once you know you're at one with God, it's much easier to navigate the gap of fear, right? Because typically when someone's heart is leading them into a direction, usually the mind tries to back them out of the way, because the heart is always leading you into the direction of the unknown. And so in order to navigate the unknown, you have to navigate the gap between where you are now and your destination. And that gap is filled with uncertainty, right? That's because you're outside of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone's here. Your destination of where you want to go to is not comfortable because it's completely new. You have to turn yourself into the person that can do it. And you have to navigate that gap. And what knowing does is that knowing makes it very easy to bridge that gap. It's like the scene from Indiana Jones where he puts his hand on his heart and he walks across the invisible bridge. The problem is that when that gap and you don't have knowing, you might have, in the beginning, you might have faith, right? Faith sometimes isn't enough because there's still all these uncertainties, but maybe you can work through it if you've got courage. Because you have to take risks of the heart, of the ego. You have to step into the unknown. The more comfortable you can get in the unknown, the more certain you have in uncertainty, the more knowing you have in all of that, right, is important. So my gift would be the gift of knowing, because then everyone would be more easily able to walk in the direction of their heart. Because the difference between believing and knowing is certainty. And knowing yourself as God is gives you that certainty to walk into the unknown. That would be my gift.
Thank you. And I think you are the only guest, if I'm correct, who mentioned this type of gift. A lot of them said compassion, faith, love, and but knowing, I don't think anyone mentioned it. So thank you very much. And we're approaching the end of this interesting discussion. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just to reinforce, I think a very simple message I'm assuming much of your audience is on the spiritually evolving path because of the podcast name and a lot of light workers and everything here. Please know we're going to make it. Okay, please know that it's already baked into the cape. We've come from the future to this moment now to bridge it. And so knowing that this is all going to unfold in its own unique way, it's already done. So relax, enjoy the journey, know the destination's already been pre-programmed by God, and we are just simply here as conduits of God to be able to be the bridges into this new, evolutionary leap in consciousness humanity's moving through. We are going to transcend. My wife and I were given a vision a while back that humanity would be there would be 100 million souls at oversoul consciousness by 2050. So 2050 is not far away, right? 2050, 100 million souls in oversoul consciousness. That's kind of like, a form of unity consciousness. So we're going to make it. The question becomes, what is your role in that, and how are you going to show up? And so if you can know yourself as God, walk in the direction of your purpose, you're going to play a role. And what you have to do is that your question is not what to do. Your question is who to be. And when you know who you are and who to be, you will immediately broadcast a unique energetic signature, a frequency that is unique to you. And once you've got your uniqueness, your energetic broadcast, there's no point changing yourself and trying to be someone else. Everyone else is already taken anyway. But your uniqueness is important, because in this universe, this one song, you're here to be a part of the symphony. So when you know your note, your frequency, your energetic signature, you can enter the great song of this universe, of this one verse, of this one song, and express your note and enter the symphony. And life becomes much more effortless for you. You move from a forcing current into an allowing current. So don't figure out what to do, know who to be, and raise your frequency note to that expression. Write once a week, and your people will come, and life will become easy the more coherent you become on your evolving path. All my love.
Chris, thank you very much. Christof, thank you very much for your service and for everything you've done for us here and in the world in general. Thank you.
Pleasure. Well, lovely to have that opportunity to spend time with you, and love some of your questions.
Thank you. And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, leave a comment. And until next time, love and gratitude.